So what we're going to work on and what I want to talk about is taking your Civil 3D information and start putting it into something like Infraworks. And so that's going to be kind of our focus for today. It's going to be also for the in-class assignment that we're working on. So I'm going to go through some stuff. I'm going to go in a little more detail here than what you'll have to do in your class assignment. But we're going to go through some of the ways of taking in that information and creating a visual presentation of that information that we just did in our design. And then we can build on that in later designs. So first thing I'm going to do is kind of go over what we're going to do. So by the end of the lecture, you should be able to know how to deal with like component roads, add in styles, create rules to control your styles and all that. And think of rules as kind of like programming and all that. We're going to add in some component rows, and we're going to tie this all around a specific property. And then we can create images or whatever to use in our design later on. And so I'm going to use Infraworks for this. And we keep coming back to Infraworks, and if you watch those videos, it can be used in all the different aspects, a lot of conceptualization, and then come back with final designs. But one of the biggest things that you need to understand is this idea of Miss McGillicuddy. Miss McGillicuddy is a person I mentioned before. It's like someone who taught third grade for 30 years and then retired. And then they decided that they were going to run for city council. They got in city council, and as soon as they got in city council, they're one of the people that is making the financial decisions for your community. As a civil engineer, you're going to be dealing with a lot of those. And so if you gave them a simple set of site plans and put a price tag of a couple $1,000,000 on it, or tens of millions of dollars on it, or something like that, they're not necessarily going to jump at that opportunity unless you can sell your idea. So I'll mention Miss McGillicuddy. I use her a lot. Infraworks is going to give you the opportunity to communicate your design to people like that. And these people are making your financial decisions and things like that. Now, in reality, who is Miss McGillicuddy? She's actually a character actress that was in 1960s comedy and all this. And so, but she was kind of the nosy neighbor. I guess you could almost say now it would be, the term would be, a Karen or a Chad or something like that. But that was Miss McGillicuddy. She was kind of the nosy neighbor. But I always liked that name, so I'm going to use it. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull in our parcels into our design in Infraworks. And the first step is really easy because the Civil 3D items that we're going to use already have kind of quick outputs that we can put into our design. And so we're going to bring in our Civil 3D file. And it has this metadata in it that we can use to control how the file's displayed. So we're not going to have to reinvent the wheel per se when we bring this in. Now, when we bring in this file, we're going to bring it in as what's called an SDF. So I talked about shape files. And remember, shape files actually are a series of files. There's the shape file, but then there's an SHX file, and there's a PRJ file, and then a DBF file. They're all these things that talk to each other they all have the same name, just different in file extensions. And if you bring one of those in, you actually have to have all of them for it to access. When you have an SDF file, it basically combines those all into one. So I like it a little bit better. It's one of the options you can get out of Civil 3D. And so it's one I'm going to use here. But that information that it stores the metadata. So not just the shape, but other information is attached to it. And that's how most GIS information is. Well, you can access all that information in Infraworks and use it as a tool to help you in your design process. So I'm going to use parcel E, and I'm going to I'm going to drop this in. I already have the parcels and all set up. I did something slightly different for my design, and if you watch the set of videos that we used previously, I did that last step. So I created some custom parcel styles and then associated those with the large retail, the small retail, and the school. These are all individual properties, single family properties, or open space. And so if you didn't do that, if you just kept all these as regular properties, you're fine. That's not a big deal. You just it's going to change one part of this process for you, but otherwise you're in pretty good shape. Everything's going to be the exact same, and definitely bringing it into Infraworks is going to be exactly the same, because that's not going to be important in our design. So how do you do this? Well, it's going to be pretty easy. If you open up your Civil 3D project and you go to Output, there's an option that says Export Civil Objects to SDF. That's the one we're going to use. It's going to create an SDF, and we are going to bring that, drop it into our Infraworks file, and set the type as a coverage area. Now, I realize these are parcels, and there actually is an option for parcels, but in our case, we're going to use them as a coverage area. I like the way we can control them a little bit better, so we're going to bring them in like that. We're going to set our style. So I'm going to set mine as a residential style and have them all come in. But before I do, the last step that I'm going to use before I hit the close and refresh is I'm going to come over to Table, and there's a bunch of options in Table, but in the user data, I'm going to grab the name of each of those properties. So each of those properties has a name depending on what number they are and what style they are, like single family, open space, whatever. And so I'm going to bring that data in. So I'm going to come over here and add that in. So that's the steps. Let me go ahead and show you how we're going to do this. So this is the property that we created in our week 10-1 exercise 1. So you should have a version of this somewhere. It came in. It has some roads that are already created. Like here's one up here, and of course the interstate down here. These are planning roads. We'll talk about those in a little bit. And then this is the property that we're going to be using in this area. And so that's our design. So what we want to do now is we want to go in and go into Civil 3D. So let's go ahead. I'm going to open Civil 3D and open up the file, and then I'm going to end up bringing it into this folder. So here's the file in Civil 3D. And I've used this in the example before. If you notice, I've got my properties up here. You'll also notice that I actually customized them out to where I have this one called Property Large Retail, this one called Property School, things like that. And then right here, I have the small retails. And so what I'm going to do here is really simple. I'm going to come over to the Output tab and click on it. And then I'm just going to come, it's about halfway across at the top, Export Civil Objects to SDF. I'm going to click OK. And then I need to find this file. Well, in my case, this file is going to be in the same folder that I created my thing. So I'm going to go over, select that, and hit OK. That's it. That's all you have to do on this side of the exercise, because you've already actually done a lot of work. You created all the parcels, you added all the information. That stuff has embedded information in it. And the SDF is going to grab that information and use it in the GIS file. So when you hit OK, it's just going to come in and you should be ready to go. Okay, so if you look right here, I have here's that file, week 10-1 exercise 1 civil file. It's SDF file, Archive Spatial Data File. That's what the SDF stands for. And so I'm ready to drop it in. Now, of course, before I do, though, remember, we want to keep our master file that hasn't had anything altered on it. So let's create a new proposal first. I'm going to come up to where it says master, hit the drop down, and go add. And I'm going to add one. I'm going to put it 01 underscore, and I'll do this parcel property. Now remember, it doesn't like spaces, so make sure you keep your use an underscore if you want to use spaces. So I'm going to hit OK. And that will create a new proposal that basically is starting with that initial step of the master file, but it's not affecting the master file. So now that I have that, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to drag and drop that in. And it should open up the data source file just like we've done this in the past. And then it also opens up our configuration. And right here we have to set the type. Well, we're going to set the type as a coverage area. We've done this before. Remember, that's like draping a sheet or something over the ground. It's going to kind of paint the ground with your whatever your design is. So I'm going to set it up as a coverage area. As far as the style goes, I'm just going to set it to the style that we're going to use the most. And so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go to zoning and I'm going to pick residential. I'm going to hit OK. So once again, I clicked on the little pencil. I double-clicked on the zoning folder and picked residential and hit OK. Now, before we go ahead and finish this out, though, remember there was that one more step. I'm going to come over to the tab that says Table. And right here where it says User Data, I'm going to click on it. And I get this little drop down, so I'm going to go down. And this has all the information in this file that was stored when it came in as an SDF. So the area of the property, the geometry, the name, the perimeter. I'm going to come in here and click Name. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit Close and Refresh. And it should come in with all of the properties. Now they're all yellow here, but this is definitely my parcel layout that I had in my design. And so it's laid out right here. And I can actually see that it ties into, right now it's a dirt road. It's going to become a regular road in a little bit of my design. And so everything zooms in. Now, I'm using this as an example. When you get to this, if you wanted to try this with your parcels, by all means do so. I'm going to stick with this one, and some of my examples are based off of this one, but that doesn't mean you can't use yours if you want to work on your own. All right, so that is the first step of pulling in the Civil 3D file as an SDF, dropping it in here, and creating the parcels as coverage areas. Now, I do want to remind you, when we bring this in, that I also came in and I added the table, the user data. That's going to be really important in our next step because we're going to use rules to actually make those other items show up. So once I did that, I hit Close and Refresh, came in, everything's good. So in the next video, we're going to actually start changing some of these properties to actually show what they are, either open space, school, large retail, or whatever. And we'll do that in the next video.